Hello everyone and welcome back. Dace here of Stonebeak Productions, of course. So if you read the title, you'll know that today we are talking about Axiom Verge for the Nintendo Switch. So I'm going to do the review first and then go over some of the details. It's going to be interesting because it's an in-depth thing that I want to get at, and yet I'm kind of just going to skim over some things. I'm not going to do I'm not going to talk about every little thing and give you like a full breakdown. I'm just going to kind of like touch on whatever different things I want to touch on, and that will ideally give you an idea and a well-rounded image, and or you can feel inspired to check out the information yourself on the details that I'm going over. So anyway, let's get into the review. So Axiom Verge, this came out last year on the Nintendo Switch. Now I will say that when the trailer first came out, I think it was like 2 minutes long or something, and today I'm actually going to sip my coffee more than a single time in a 43-minute span. Otherwise, yeah, I like my coffee hot, so yeah. Oh yes. So when it came out, I saw the trailer and I was just immediately hooked. I was like thinking to myself, man, I've been waiting for a game like this, and I didn't even realize that I was until I saw this trailer. So I was like really stoked for quite a while. And interestingly enough, there was I eventually learned that there was going to be a physical release, the Multiverse Edition, and so I was like, okay, well, it's only like a week or so, it's only coming out a week or so after the digital, so I figured, okay, I'm just going to hold off on the digital and definitely get the physical. But as time went on and we got closer to the date, I learned that the physical release was being pushed back something outrageous, like another 2 months, even though that's not actually too much time. But I was just like, no, like 2 months, like I'm not willing to do that. Like my excitement was just so immense for this title that I was like, okay, whatever, I'm gonna get the digital, and then I'm still gonna get the physical when it comes out because I want to be playing this now. So that's what I did. I invested a few solid days just like digging right in and just exploring every nook and cranny you can imagine. Like I just went all out for Axiom Verge. Like I did a normal playthrough first at 100% for map and items. And then immediately after beating the game, I did a hard mode, again 100% for map and items. So that is like a huge undertaking. So let's just get right into the story now that I've kind of like set the stage a little bit with like how I came to learn about the game and that kind of stuff. So in a nutshell, I will give a super basic rundown of the events. So you played this character Trace. He's this scientist. The opening scene begins with him and his colleague Dr. Hammond doing this experiment, okay? And Trace says something like, oh, I wish this would like work this time. And something happens, and Dr. Hammond is like, oh, like something's up, like da-da-da-da-da. And suddenly there's this explosion that happens, and the lab collapses in on them. And the next thing you know is this capsule. You have this scene of like this alien-looking room, and you have this really like high-tech looking capsule like spin upwards, and you see Trace like inside, and he like comes to, and he's not sure where he is. Unfamiliar world. There's this mysterious voice that sort of guides you to find this weapon, and then very soon you learn that this voice is like a what they call a Ruzalki. It's like a robotic war machine, but right now it's just a head because it's not attached to its body. So anyway, you team up with the Ruzalki, and they explain that there's this guy Athatos who did like these evil crimes way back or whenever, and he's been like trying to shut them down or whatever else, but they kind of like waged war on him as well, so they're at a standoff at this point. So you assist the Ruzalki in two main things. You turn the power filter on, okay, and then the second thing is you reactivate the repair drones so that they can go out and do their stuff, and also attach the heads to the bodies of these Ruzalki. So along the way, all sorts of different things happen, and you start to have these suspicions that, and of course, like, I'm just going to be skimming here, okay? So you start to have these suspicions that you and Athatos have some sort of connection, okay? So eventually you continue doing whatever you're doing, and then you'll eventually learn that you and Athatos are the same. And what I mean by that is the trace that you see in the initial scenes of the game, like the one that experienced the lab explosion, he's the one that eventually would travel to the planet Sudra. That's the planet you're on, okay? And he would go on to become this Athatos guy who we're told releases this pathogen that kills thousands of Sudrans, and so that's like what caused the Ruzalki to then like go after him, and he defends himself and like does stuff to them and all that kind of stuff. So that is a really mind-blowing part, even though there are like hints leading up to it. It's still insane, and it relates to one of my main points and one of my favorite things about the game, which I've never seen done before. I'm sure there are games that have done this or something similar, but the fact is, the Tracy you play as is a clone of the first one, okay? So when you wake up in that chamber right after the introductory scene, you just assume it's the same Trace, but in actuality it's a different Trace. It's just a clone, and who knows how much time has actually passed since the original Trace from the first intro scenes. Like, who knows how much time has passed since he actually came to Sudra for the first time. And so, like, it's insane. You, like, as a player, you never once suspect that it's a different character. You just see this starting scene, and then you start the game a few seconds later, and you just assume you're this main character. Which, like, you are a main character, but, like, yeah, you know what I mean. Like, so it's crazy to me. Like, I'm still blown away by this game and some of the plot twists. So anyway, you learn that, and you're just like, oh, well, I want to talk to this Athatos because it's like, it's me. So, like, maybe I can, like, understand, like, where he's coming from or, like, what the situation is. So you and the Ruzalki sort of agree that Athatos won't be killed off, because you're just like, I don't want to kill him, I just want to talk to him. So you progress through the game, you eventually get power-ups and whatever else so that you can actually access the elevator, and he's at the top of this elevator. That's where he's been hiding out because the Ruzalki destroyed his like unit for like being mobile, and so he's more or less just trapped up there at this point. Yet he was able to do enough so that the Ruzalki aren't able to get him where he is, and they're kind of slowly decaying as well. So they're at a standstill. So you go up to Athatos eventually, and you fight him and defeat him in battle. And then, even though you had agreed with Elsinova, the main Ruzalki that you talked to throughout the game, she is just like, yeah, even though I promised, we're not taking this chance. We are just gonna kill him. So she kills him, and then sends Trace back to Earth, where we go into like the final scenes of the game, where it shows him just like doing stuff, like grabbing things from the lab. It was like a point, like it's kind of tricky. Like she put him back in a place where like the lab is fine, or it was like after the lab explosion or something like that. So the lab is like either repaired or whatever. So there's a scene of him like leaving with his things because there's just something about this that doesn't feel right to him. Like something just feels very off. So he begins. The very last scene shows like he begins doing research because he's like, well, there's nothing for me on Earth. I want to get back to Sudra because like I know so much truth now, and that's like where I belong. So he starts researching, and there's just like a scene where his like eyes glow, and then credits roll, or maybe it's the percentages of like your game info that comes up first. But anyway, that's more or less the story. So you're thinking, okay, it sounds like pretty basic, like other than like the amazing fact that you're a clone. But when we actually get into the discussion part of this after I finish the review, or some of it may even intertwine depending on how that works out, there's just going to be some really, really awesome info. So that being said, that's more or less the story. So let's go over the controls now, okay? Or how about the pace, because that's first in line here. So the whole time the game maintains a very steady pace. Okay, so, and I don't have my notes on like a paper today because there was just way too much info that I typed out, and then I was like, I'm not going to put this on paper just for easy access. So I'm just going to be looking over at my computer here. So yeah, the game maintains a steady pace. There are always things to do, even if, like, amazingly enough, even during the times where I was stuck, or not stuck, but just like wandering around, figuring out what to do next. There were always things to do, always items to find, like every nook and cranny, literally. Always things to be seeking out. So even if you were just like, oh, I've been down this chamber like 100 times, like there were still little corners or like little areas, walls, section of walls that you could check. So that was brilliant, and I loved it. I thought that was just fantastic. Okay. Yeah, so another thing that I really like about the pace of this game is that there's a very fantastic balance between, like, as the story does its thing, every step of the way, you're like, bit by bit, gaining like your standard upgrades and weapons that are required for the game, which is like, that's typical, of course. Like, you're going to progress as you go through a game, but what I really like is that even with that, there is all of this extra like secret items being found as you go, and that just adds so much more substance to the pace as well, because like I said, it's a steady pace, and yet it's just so much more full, if that makes sense. And so I really appreciate that about the game. Okay, so that's it for pace. So the controls are super, super tight. I did not have like a single issue with the controls. Like, everything is just super responsive. Like, when you press something or like a combination of something, it registers. Like, there are some tricky ones to pull off, but if you're paying attention and doing things, like, you will have no issues. That was my experience anyway. So jumping feels awesome in this game. Like, before your first, like, well, I think there's only the one jump upgrade, but like before that, jumping feels like standard, but it's like a very well balanced mechanic. I'm really impressed with it. But when you get the second, or yeah, when you get your like jump boost, excuse me, you can obviously jump higher, but the way the gravity works is like really great. It's this may be like something that not many people care about, but it stood out for me anyway. Like just the fall rate was perfect. I loved it. So I love just bounding around in some of the open areas. I just thought that was fantastic. So I thought that was really sweet. Trace runs at a decent pace. Okay, so again, for like sections where you're backtracking or it's just like a long chamber that you're going through, I didn't mind that kind of travel. Like running around goes by pretty quickly. So I enjoyed that. It just makes for like a smooth game experience in my opinion. Whereas like if your character is walking everywhere or like whatever the case is, like yeah, the running is just really nice. So I'm gonna touch on like movement, UI, and gameplay just a bit too, as like this all ties into the controls too. But so the map, inventory, notes, all that kind of stuff in your menu, that's all laid out in a very streamlined and super easy to use way. Very, very easy to use. Everything is like right there when you want it. And I just think that's fantastic. Again, it just makes for a like fluid gameplay in my opinion. Okay, so fast saves and loading times. This was like awesome because like when you boot up the game, you'll go right to the opening screen, and then like when you select your file and you like yeah, it's just pretty much instantaneous. Like I couldn't recall a single time where there was actually like a loading screen. It kind of just like you click and then boom, you're in and you're going. Same with saves, like you just get into one of the capsules and it's just really quick. It's just a bonus in my opinion. Okay, so music and sound effects is what we're going to talk about next. The music, okay, one thing I didn't mention at the very start of this, which yeah, deserves to be mentioned. So Tom Happ is the guy who did everything for this game. So it began as a passion project for him, and then eventually just became something that he did. Like it began taking up more and more of his time, and eventually just became his full-time job. So he did all the programming, all of the art, all, like design, everything. He composed all the music himself. He literally did everything in this game. Okay, just incredible creativity. So in terms of the music, it's amazing. Each area has a very unique song that plays, and there's just such a wide range of moods that are expressed in these songs. They're just absolutely fantastic. They're multi-layered and in depth. Like they just have a great build-up a lot of the time. Some of them are like not so layered, but that doesn't take away from how awesome they are. So in that sense, like yeah, the layered ones especially are really fantastic because like I'm just into that kind of music. But just pour a little more here. Okay, so let's see. By the way, the Multiverse Edition, that's the physical, that comes with the original soundtrack, like a disc of it, okay? And actually, at some point, maybe I'll just do a quick video, just like a 5-minute whatever, going over the contents of the Multiverse Edition, because it's pretty cool. The sound effects are great. Weapons, enemies, finding items, just like no matter what the sound effect is, it was well thought out in my opinion. Everything just really fits and makes sense, and I just love hearing what sounds humans choose for these things that happen in video games. Like, it's just incredible to me. So like, all in all, the music and sound effects are just like top notch and so good. Okay, so I'm gonna just touch briefly on two things that I noticed. These are two issues. So the first is going to be about the digital version, and then the second thing is going to be about the physical version. So the one thing I noticed about the digital version is that the game would sort of just crash, and then I would just go back to my like home menu on the Nintendo Switch. Now this was mainly during the credits. I think that was like 99% of the time. It was just like during the credits, or like right before I was about to see my like, oh, game finished stats, that sort of thing. So that was like one issue. At the same time, like, it happens. Like, I've had that in Breath of the Wild, so it's like I'm not really raising this to be like, oh, it's an issue with like Tom Happ or Axiom Verge. Like, it happens in games. It's just something I noticed. It happens in something as big as Breath of the Wild as well. So like, yeah, whatever. The second thing for the physical copy, which is the one I played during the Let's Play that I just shared, the one thing I noticed with that, which never occurred in the digital version, but like sometimes when I would go to a new room or whatever, there would just be no music at all. And it might have even been sometimes when I would like load a file, or like, let's say I would die and then I would like go back to the save point. I think sometimes there would just be no music until I would then leave and enter a new room, and then it would start again. So again, like, it's not a huge deal, because it's like, okay, just go to the next room then, and boom, you're good to go. But it was, again, just something I noticed and something I wanted to share anyway. Okay, so replay value, very high replay value. So if I didn't already mention this, because we're 22 minutes into it and I don't recall everything I might have mentioned. Plus, this is my second take because I totally glossed over some things in the first take, and so I just scrapped that one. And I know I mentioned it in that one. So anyway, the first time I played the game, I did the normal mode 100%. And immediately after, I did the hard mode 100%, everything. If that doesn't speak replay value, then I have no idea what does. Like, I was just so gung-ho even after doing everything that is required to get that 100%, and that is huge. And I'll get more into that when we go over some of the other details, because that is like quite the undertaking. So the fact that I then jumped right back into the game immediately after to do the harder version, that says a lot. Like, sure, that's part of, like, that's coming from me because I just have like that drive and that passion, and I love the game so much that like I was just so pumped and ready to plunge right back in. So it's not going to be like that for everyone, but in my opinion, the replay value is huge. Okay, so yeah, so the point I was going to make was in this game there are secret worlds. So I think there are something like 48 or 50 of these secret worlds. So there are, in any given playthrough, there will only ever be 5 in total. So you'll have 2 simple defined, 2 medium, and then 1 hard, I think. And the game will randomly generate like 2 out of the group of simple ones. So like out of the 50, there will be so many that are designated spots for the simple, designated spots for the medium, and the hard ones. Okay, so you'll pretty much never have a run through where you have like this set of 5 secret worlds and then you'll start a new file and you will just never have the same combination of secret worlds, and they can be hidden anywhere, literally. So to get 100% means that you uncover all 5 secret worlds and get the 2 items that are in each one. Like, so each secret world has 2 items hidden in them. And so yeah, like, just going back to the replay value, that, like, yeah, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of effort. You can sometimes stumble into these secret worlds, other times, even using the hints, it can be tricky to find these, okay? So yeah, just huge replay value with that point in mind. Like, just the fact that, like, to get 100% in this game, you are really doing your work, okay? So let's see. Yeah, so my last point for the replay value, this is just a really quick one, is that, like, I've played the game 3 times. It hasn't even been a year that the game has been out on the Switch. And the fact that I've played it 3 times already, like, what other game have I played 3 times from start to finish in the course of a year? Like, I don't think I've ever once done that, and I have been so pumped about other games too. Like, I love certain games, but actually Chrono Cross might have been done 3 times back to back, now that I think of it. Okay, yeah, so that's the exception. And I was doing that just to get every single character. And it might actually only be 2.5 times that you are required to do, like, a full playthrough. Or it might have even... Okay, anyway, we're getting off topic. But anyway, 3 times for Axiom Verge in less than a year is saying a lot, okay? And honestly, I would easily start a new file today. But the thing is, we have, some titles dropping this month still that, like, I'm just so ready to plunge into. But anyway, just awesome game, awesome replay value. Okay, that sums that up. Overall, absolutely incredible indie. Like, if you are into Metroid style games, even Castlevania, so, like, yeah, like, honestly, if you love exploring huge caverns, just going so deep into whatever planet you're on and just searching every little pixel on the screen for secret passages, items, weapons, like all sorts of power-ups, like you name it. Like, and if you like sci-fi especially, like, just Axiom Verge, I will say, is a must-play. Some people have said that they think the plot and the story and, like, all that kind of stuff is weak. To be honest, I've said this before to various people. I've only played the handheld Metroid games, and I love them, but the story, the timeline, those kinds of details could never, like, the things they have done could never even come close to comparing to what Axiom Verge did, for me anyway. But that's just my opinion. Like, I think the story is incredible. There's so much depth. It's elaborate, and it's just so brilliant. I love it. Not to mention, it's just a perfect title if you're into sharing and discussing, like, this in-depth stuff. Like, not every game is going to be like that. For instance, like, if you play, like, Metroid 2, it's, like, awesome game, but, like, there isn't really too much room for speculation. Like, you can discuss some things, but there aren't really too many details that you're wondering about, or at least I'm not. But with Axiom Verge, it's a completely different story. It's just so over the top. Okay, so I think my last point for the review section, and I think what I might actually do is break this into 2 parts. Do, like, this first video will just be the review, and then I will probably do a second, which is kind of getting into the greater details, I'll say. But one of my last things for kind of wrapping this up is that in my life, I've played a lot of video games over the years. Like I grew up 80s, 90s gaming. Um, so I've played my fair share at this point. And I can honestly only name a few games. I could probably even count them all on my hands. But I can only think of a few games that actually had me jotting down like things like codes or like writing out like images or things to remember, because like back in the day you didn't have screen capture, you didn't have the internet, like you literally just did all your homework. Like if there was something in the game that you were like you want to remember, you would write it down, like passwords for Mega Man for instance, or if there was something in the game that you were attempting to figure out, which is more what I'm getting at, you would go outside of the game and use what tools you had available to, like even if that's just pen and paper, to like collect your thoughts or like gather and organize information, that sort of thing. There are a few games like that have had that effect on me, but Axiom Verge was one of them. I think there was one main thing where I came up with my own method of deciphering and translating this alien language or like different language so that it was then switched into English so that I could then have some clue as to what to do at this point in the game, wherever it was. That was during my first playthrough. So like to me that's really, really special, because like to step outside of a game back into like your normal world to then like piece these things together by whatever means you come up with, like that is incredibly rare to me. And the fact that I was doing this for Axiom Verge, it just adds it up, like steps it up a notch in my books. So I think that's really cool and something that I definitely will remember. Like it's in that group of games now that has had that effect. So all in all, just an awesome game. I'm so excited to see what Tom Happ has in store, because he has expressed in interviews that there will be a sequel, definitely. Now with things he's got on the go, like I think his son has some health issues and things like that. Like he's a very busy individual. But he has expressed that there will be a sequel, and it's probably going to be like 5 years down the road at this point, but at least we have sort of like a rough idea as to like when something might be coming out. So with how much I am into Axiom Verge, I can only imagine what he's going to do next. It may not be like a 2D platformer where you explore, like it could be. It might be something totally different that we haven't seen yet, but I am just totally on board. And if you guys are enjoying the game from what you've seen me play, or if you've played it yourself, then this is something that we can be excited about together. Anyway, that is going to wrap up the review portion. Okay, so thank you guys so much for watching. Definitely like, subscribe, share your comments below. I would love to get into some conversation about this game. And yeah, have a great day, and I will see you guys next time.